This is Maharajas of Scale, a podcast where we go behind the scenes and talk to founders who are demolishing the myths around building and scaling a big business in India. These are the stories that have shattered the assumptions around Indian consumers and are changing the game completely. I am Krishna serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Flit, the fashion locator in town, and startup mentor, bringing you these stories. Hey everyone, this is your host Krishna Jonakadla from Maharajas of Scale. They say a great education is a passport to terrific success in life, and especially if that is one earned from a reputable university, all the more so, right? It can become the wind beneath your wings. Today we have an exciting entrepreneur amongst us, Akshay Chaturvedi, who's giving wings to lots of dreams of studying abroad and getting accepted in a fantastic overseas university. Akshay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure, Krishna.
So, Akshay, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now.
Sure, Krishna. Thank you. Thank you again for having me. So, as you rightly pointed out, I run leverageedu.com. About 80% of our business, so we help Indian students get into a university of their choice. Rather, we say that a dream university of their choice. 80% plus of our business is Indian students who choose to go to universities abroad, and 20% of our business is essentially people who choose to go to universities in India. So largely anybody who's aspiring for higher education after their school gets over, there are target set, and we essentially work with the students to help them achieve their dreams. So just to build a corollary for you very quickly, why that's 80-20? That's because in India, largely, you have test prep-led admissions. So for example, if you want to get to the best institutions of this country, largely up till here, you would give the JEE, or you'll give the NEET, you'll give the CLAT, all of those things. That is changing quickly. Of course, you have the next set of Ivy Leagues coming in India. You have the Ashokas and the OP Jindals and the Kriya, Plaksha, all these new universities, which are more applications-led. Traditionally in the West, it's always been applications-led. Test prep has a much lower impact in the overall candidacy of a person making it to a university. So our admission focus is more applications-led. Hence, 80% of it is abroad, everywhere, the West, East, everywhere, and 20% of it is essentially India, in these institutions which are kind of changing the paradigm right now, changing the scene, and making it more Ivy League types. So yeah, that's what we do, and again, very excited to be here and be sharing more about my journey and be sharing more about what we do and how we're essentially helping our students achieve their dreams every single day in different ways and through different products.
That's fantastic, Akshay. Usually success means being the right person at the right place at the right time. And in your case, I suppose you help thousands of students. Share some interesting numbers about your startup. What sort of scale have you achieved? What sort of impact have you already delivered?
Sure, Krishna. So very quickly, we are 3 years plus into the journey. We have already impacted about 13,000 plus students. We are now helping people apply to courses and universities across the world. We started from the US, but now our business comes from right across. We have a very big presence in the UK. We have a big presence in countries like Canada, Australia. Just before we kind of went live, I was telling you about interesting things that are happening in New Zealand, France, Germany. So that is that part. And we have raised 3 rounds of finance. We are right now in 5 cities in India, and we are about 120, a team of 120 people who are kind of stacked across different teams, technology, product, student counselors, and marketing, so on and so forth. So yeah, still a very small startup in some sense, getting towards scale and learning a lot along this journey, and hopefully we'll get to where we want to and make a really beautiful company out of India in this space.
So our research actually tells us that about 1 million students actually do their research with you. Is that true?
Correct. So these are paid students, and we have over, in fact, 1.3 million people who come onto the platform. That's the freemium version. They come onto the platform every single month to just be around a platform. So we have a beautiful platform that is an AI tool that tells you based on your previous background, based on your previous acats, what university you can make it to. You have a search query you can download, and you can download ebooks, you can search thousands of videos, Q&A. So we have a lot more people coming in from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities who want to search information about higher education and careers. Just like I think you can think of it as entertainment/education, you'll always have a lot of people who are curious, who want to know more. And that aligns with our larger impact. We don't want to monetize it. We want to make sure that the basic career advice is free for everybody. And then we have over 30,000 plus people who we essentially engage with them in a 1:1 free career counseling. We don't monetize that part as well. And then from there, we essentially have, say, a couple of 400, 500 people every single month who go on and become our paid customers.
Interesting. What's your own personal background?
Sure, Krishna. So, and it aligns with leverage edu's as well. Very early. So, I've grown up in Delhi right throughout. My dad was a journalist. My mom was a teacher. My dad moved to Delhi in 1978. I've grown up in this city right through. Love the city. In fact, but I've lived in Bangalore as well for a year. So, I love the city as well. Hence, I was talking about it just before we went live. Grew up in Delhi. I was in my undergrad in Delhi University, I joined an organization called ISEC. So ISEC is this world's largest youth organization of sorts, which helps people move from one country to another for interesting experiences, for internships, so on and so forth. So I essentially loved the concept of student mobility from a very early age when I was 17 or 18. And I got to spend a lot of time doing that in my undergrad. Fast forward, worked in finance, consulting, KPMG with EY, did a bunch of interesting stints there, learned the hard way what building something really means in an MNC structure, saw scale, thankfully, which really helps me today. And then I went on to essentially do my own post-graduation, applied to a bunch of schools and was lucky enough to kind of have an admit at Indian School of Business as well in Hyderabad. Went to ISB, and this is where the second the connection happens with what I'm doing today. I got elected to be a director of the student board. And because of that gave me an opportunity to kind of represent the school, understand admissions in a slightly better way than I already did, understand marketing really well, understand the higher education ecosystem really well. And then it was like a nobody's choice. Like I loved the concept of student mobility from my undergrad. I was seeing admissions, marketing, higher education playing out while I was kind of working for the school in that 1 year. And that's how Leverage essentially formed. It was formed out of dorm room. And I remember the first guy I ran up to share the idea with, Digvijay Gagnecha, who's now my chief operating officer and partner in crime. So things started from that year at ISB when it was an entrepreneurship project. It got selected to be a part of this fellowship in Silicon Valley called Draper University. So about 28 project/people got selected. Was lucky to be one of them. Spent about 6 months there. Still felt that the idea wasn't really ready. It was a slightly different form back then. It was an app that helped students meet mentors, just like it is right now, but essentially students were not charged and mentors would get karma points and they could redeem it at coffee outlets and so on and so forth. So we were kind of monetizing it through the merchant ecosystem. And then we realized that, so this was 2015. I had grown up in love with the startup ecosystem from 2008 onwards. So I had the sense that, let's get to 5 million users first and then we'll make revenue. But that sense came crashing in 2015 when everybody would ask, this was a kind of decline of the rise that we had seen for the last many years, and everybody would kind of ask that, hey, where the FS Dhanda? Where is the revenue? And I was like, okay, you know what? You need to think about it. So I took a step back and worked in the internet ecosystem for a fair bit. Joined Snapdeal, which was a great time in my career. Enjoyed a lot there. Kunal Behel was kind enough to kind of sponsor my tickets when I went to the US. So that's how that connection happened. Deep Kalra had recommended me to TIE, which sponsored my living cost. So I had a lot of help from the startup ecosystem. In some way, I've publicly grown in front of the Indian startup ecosystem since 2008, 2009 onwards. And yeah, so then after Snapdeal, I worked for a year and a half at a very interesting company called babajob.com, which was India's largest blue collar job marketplace, and had a lot of fun building it. The founder Veer Kashyap is an angel in my company now, and learned a lot by working alongside him for that 1 year and kind of going deeper into the Indian startup scene. And sometime in early 2017 began Leverage Edu, and yeah, we've had a crazy ride since then. We have grown the company. We've been lucky to essentially have a lot of interesting backers, Bloom Ventures, DSG Consumer Partners, some very interesting angels who have really championed us right throughout. Vishal Kondal, serial entrepreneurs, Ash Lilani from Sama Capital, Amrish Rao, who sold his company previously to PayU, now the CEO of Fine Labs, Alok Mittal, Kashyap Devara, Anand Sankeshwar, the promoter of VRL Logistics, Deepak Jain from Bain. So a bunch of very interesting people, I think, who have been great mentors and great supporters, some of whom have essentially also kind of invested into subsequent rounds and really back the company through and through. And yeah, so we are at a very interesting time of our journey right now, given everything that is happening to EdTech with the current onslaught. So yeah, thank you so much again for asking me that question. That also helps me put the journey into perspective every time I do that.
Interesting. Well, you covered a lot in that response. In fact, I happen to know ISEC. I applied to ISEC way back, I think in 1993 or something. And I've always been interested in, joining international organizations. Unfortunately, I didn't make it for whatever odd reason. The weird thing is all the people that went on to join ISEC Bangalore, I've traveled more than them. I've done more than them. But that's a discussion for another day. So let's dig into that 2015 start a little bit. What happened to that app? What sort of scale did you achieve? It sounds like an interesting idea per se, given that Freecharge itself was about providing a coupon that you could monetize or get a discount on somewhere else. It feels like that's an idea that had legs. What happened there?
It's very interesting that you see it from the other lens. I think my founder lens saw it from the perspective of that it was a mentor marketplace at the end of the day. And I could see a bunch of other mentor marketplaces as well. And I realized that I think while the MBA is not really celebrated in the ecosystem, I think the MBA really helped me put things into perspective to say that, how am I gonna build a $1 billion revenue business out of this. This can get to a lot of users. This can get to an XYZ valuation if we are able to raise money when things are good. But how do I make a very sustainable, deeply rooted, deeply mode-driven business, which I was very keen on, which is something I'm very passionate about even right now, which is what I obsess about right now as well. So what we did back then, 8,000 downloads, the app was working very well, but still we had this sense that it will never be able to scale or have the impact that we needed to have, because when somebody's kind of giving a service largely for free, you essentially neither have the user taking as much interest to get to a certain point. And when it's career, when it's education, you want the seriousness from both sides of the marketplace to be a little bit more. So when we essentially launched back again, and we launched with 3 categories on the marketplace. We said that, okay, we don't really know. So in 2017 January, I launched with 3 categories that said that the students could take help from mentors, either for career guidance very early on, like school career guidance, or university admissions, or helping kind of get them ready for their first job. It so turned out within 3 months that we realized that university admissions was like the bazooka of this, and kind of helped us grow very, very fast in the first couple of months itself. So and again, if I have to go back in time and kind of take that decision, I will take the same decision again, because I've realized over time, I've seen 2 cycles now, the 14 to 16 cycle, if you want to call it a cycle, and what's happening right now. And I've realized that the sexiness is fine, but more than sexy, it's important that a business is fundamentally very, very strong and you are creating real value for the users. At the end of the day, it should work in some sense like a dukaan. If I'm going to the dukaan and I'm taking a bread, I'm happy. I paid 20-25 rupees, whatever, for the bread. I'm going to come home and slice it out and have that bread. So it has to work in a very tangential concept where the user is deriving value that he or she is happy with. That's very, very core. It's the simplest, easiest explanation of something and how a business should work. So that's what I realized, and that's what I would essentially build again and again.
Awesome. So 8,000 downloads, how long was that journey? Feels pretty quick, or was it just several months?
Sure. So several months. We started sometime in October, November 2014. I was closely working with a professor of mine, Anindya Ghosh, who's a visiting professor at ISB from NYU Stern. And so we had a lot of downloads, used a lot of those typical growth 101 stuff, and we kind of shut it down sometime in June or July 2015. So we had a run of about close to 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
But I've seen a live period of about 3 to 4 months. But yes, it was fun doing that. It was fun kind of building something which is only looking at amassing more users and just helping them get to the next level. So we used to feel really happy when somebody used to get an advice, but we realized that if we really want to kind of build a business out of this, we need to make sure that one-off advice is complemented by a full service around what can essentially happen. So now on the platform, it's not a one-off advice. This mentor on the platform works with the student over a period of 2 to 3 months, helps them get to their choice of university, bunch of universities. And in fact, the mentors and the students keep in touch for many years after that too. And I think that really helps me sleep well at night. The fact that so many relationships are being formed in the platform every single day. And in some form, all of these people will remember Leverage for the rest of their lives.
It's pretty interesting, isn't it? Usually feels a bit counterintuitive. Usual startup success or journey would say you start with a niche and then you outgrow and then become full service. In your case, in order to actually establish something that you could monetize, you had to go a little full service and then eventually find an aspect that was picking up in that. So it's pretty interesting.
Very well said. In fact, kind of just to complete that loop, you're right. So even now we are launching as part of the overall platform, we've been launching multiple smaller products. So in fact, we've just gone beta with the product that we've launched in schools, which is an absolute hit. It has already seen some 10,000, 12,000 installs. just doing a very basic thing, helping a student make a career tree, figure out how is the career going to play out based on their interest today, and give them access to like videos, like say a guitarist who's kind of teaching them how to play guitar, or somebody who's teaching them how to be a sports nutritionist, or somebody who's kind of teaching them, hey, this is what happens in luxury brand management. So we launched a simple careers app. I won't have the name right now, in schools, and about close to 9 schools in Delhi. It's such a huge hit. So now we're essentially going the other way around, exactly like you said, and saying that, okay, the larger reason for doing that is we want to get to users much early on and be able to, we want to be available to them because that's part of the larger impact story. Also, we want to be there for them when they take that decision on how should I pursue my higher education from here. So it all integrates very beautifully. But we're doing this, we built out a new platform called UniConnect, which helps universities meet students at the click of a button, help the student kind of just click apply now, and their application entirely directly goes to the university. So like removing the broker from between. So now building a lot of products that integrate that entire journey and moving the other way out. So you very beautifully kind of summed it out.
Interesting. Let's dig into that starting point in 2017 a little bit.
Sure.
So you had all of this learning from Snapdeal, your ISB education, and also the previous app that you did. And initially, did you launch all the 3 of them? Just peel the onion a bit and go in. What was that start like?
No, that's what we did. We went ahead and just launched very basic website, a marketplace of sorts, 2-way marketplace, and wanted to see where will traffic emerge out. It happened at university admissions was a hot take, like I shared with you. And I think there was also this realization at my end, and I also learned over time that the space was really big. Not a lot of people could see it at that point of time. Some are right now, interestingly enough. And I think that's why we've been able to get the backers that we have. But at that point of time, not a lot of people could essentially see how deep this industry really goes. Because if you think of it, every single kid in this world needs to figure out what they will do after school. They could be going to a larger university, they could be going to a smaller community college, they could be learning coding, they could be going to nursing, they could be acting, they could be getting into sports, whatnot. So there are like hundreds of thousands of professions, and you need to really figure out what you want to do. So we realized that it's such a huge problem, and why don't we essentially go deeper into the university admissions vertical? So in the beginning, we just from a business 101 perspective, we focused only on US. We focused on STEM programs or management programs, and then we eventually ventured into a couple of months down the line into other programs within the US, then into other countries. And then it's kind of taken us, say, up till early this year to kind of go out and fully have all courses and all countries and available on our platform. And today we have a larger brand where people come in, and if you will see, we are the most reviewed company, by the way, despite having much larger brick and mortar competitors. We're the most reviewed company on the internet. And people see us for the value that Leverage Edu is an organization. Leverage Edu is a platform which will tell us what's right for a career. If a student is, for example, say, you know Vikas, right? Like Vikas Khanna, the legendary chef. If Vikas Khanna, when he was in class 12, we were told, no, you know what? You work a little bit harder. Why don't you do this data science degree, and why don't you do this STEM degree? We would have lost a very big talent. And that essentially is the very crux of what a platform does. It makes sure that somebody who's good in culinary arts follows that. Somebody who's good in nutrition follows that. Somebody who's good in sports management should go to St. Mary's in London and get a job at ESPN or Chelsea football club, and not essentially be slogging out in a investment bank or in a data-led company where he or she is not able to play out to their full potential. I think that becomes very, very important.
So the initial part where the university admissions part kicked off. So you launched a website. How did people come to know of it? How did your first few users get to you? How did all of that happen?
Sure. So I think slightly easier because for the first couple of months, only focused on ISB admissions. So because I was an alum of ISB, I had been doing this for a while on the sites, helping people get to ISB. I had great results. I had everybody who I was coaching making it to ISB. So I developed some kind of online reputation for helping people get to their MBA colleges. I got in a bunch of early employees who also some way came from the industry and who were able to essentially help other guys as well. Then we started getting more and more mentors on the platform, mentors all the way from a Yale or a Stanford or a INSEAD or a ISB or a Wharton. And all of these guys essentially together, the larger messaging that went out with every single time we essentially went out was that why do you have to go to a Tom, Dick and Harry on the street when you can essentially get advice from somebody who's actually walked into your shoes? So that messaging was very, very impactful right in the beginning, because we had really invested a lot of time putting that AI algorithm together and saying that as a mentee, you will work with somebody who's like you. If I am from Kanpur, I get to work with somebody who's also from a Kanpur with similar likes and dislikes, Sufi to Sufi, EPL to EPL, so that I am working with somebody I really aspire to be like. And on the mentor side, I'm working with somebody I feel like, hey, you know what? This is what I was like 5 years back in the day. I really want to help this person. So a lot of relatability gets kicked in. And I think that was our very special point right in the beginning, that we could help people get advice from somebody who was like them, somebody who would understand them really well. So that initially helped us pick up a lot of traction. And thankfully, because the mentors were well paid on the platform, the first 50 mentors came by way of me begging all my friends and asking them to be there. But over time, we had Reddit threads, we had Quora threads where people would recommend being a mentor, and we had more and more mentors kick in. Today, we have 2,000 plus mentors on the platform, by the way. So if I have to kind of nickel it down, I would say it was very important that A, we had the right messaging, and B, of course, we hustled a lot. For example, I had no money to run ads on Facebook or Google. So I would go from college to college and do these big workshops, sitting in canteens and asking student unions to kind of put a set of like 100 people together for me and try and inspire them and share my journey, tell them that, hey, this is what they need to do for their career. And that's how a lot of those early customers came, and we moved from pillar to pillar in the first 6 to 8 months of the business.
Interesting. When did you get a sense that, I know traffic picked up, you got all of these people who are like me? That's an amazing hack. Every personality coach or every person who studies humans or anthropologists will tell you that people who are like me is the first thing that possibly people relate to, right?
Absolutely.
Group discussion, you go to a company, people who come from the same background, people who come from the same locality, you relate to them. And that's a terrific hack, maybe in hindsight, right? But that is great. At what point of time did it occur to you that you had something serious going here, something could really take shape here?
Sure. So I'll cover both the parts. The first part is that it wasn't so much of a revolution for us to have a mentor marketplace, because that's where we came from. So we were a university admissions company later and a mentor marketplace first. And we were always figuring out that what should we do with a bunch of these mentors that we already have on the platform. So the fact that we moved from mentor marketplace that had 3 categories open to moving to a platform where these mentors would only focus on university admissions was a very easy choice. So the decision framework wasn't like kind of very tough at that point of time for me. Second piece is, I think, I was kind of fortunate enough to have worked in the startup ecosystem always said, grown up publicly in front of the Indian startup ecosystem. So I think within 3 months of starting the business or 4 months of starting the business, I had a lot of people who were kind of knocking our doors and saying that, you know what, I want to invest, and why don't you go out and raise a seed round? And I think that's what I did. And in about 15 days, we closed our first round of money with a lot of influential angels coming in and so got a lot of help from mentors who I could learn from on how to scale from there. And from there on, we started kind of building the first, the first structure in the team, crossing 10 employees, crossing like 12 employees, getting to an office from a co-working space, and some inkling of an organization kind of started to come in those first 9 to 10 months. I think that was really key. So yeah, in some sense, you can say that the past experience, both related to leverage in its previous form, as well as the fact that I had worked very closely with a lot of people who had some belief in me, that helped us kind of do the first, the first liftoff essentially happened because of these guys in the first 6 to 9 months of the business.
Amazing. So the first 4 months you were bootstrapped?
Yeah, the first 3 to 4 months we were bootstrapped. That's right.
Okay.
We are profitable, very interestingly. I go back in time, I feel that, okay, we are trying to get to profitability at the moment. And I sometimes share with the team, you know what, like the first 4 to 6 months we were profitable. I remember one of my mentors, he's now one of our loveliest champions. He came to the office at the end of 6 months and told them, hey, you know what, like we are profitable, revenue minus cost is equal to profit. It's like what the fuck are you doing? Why are you not reinvesting this in your growth? And you also have like money that you have kind of raised right now. And I was like, yeah, he's right. It's something so basic. But yeah, I think in hindsight, it was very important to have advice coming in from a lot of people. I am a big fan of podcasts myself, like these. I'm a big fan of kind of reading a lot of books. So it's very important that you have the right advice at every stage, every week, every month, to be able to understand how you will move to the next level, because none of us have done it before. And every day, every week, every month, we are learning more and more. So we have to be like absolutely crazy, obsessive learning machines to be able to scale a company the way it's supposed to be and to be able to kind of make it a very, very large business. that has massive impact.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I follow a principle. I've shared this on past episodes that I call it the fruit on the tree principle. I learned it somewhere else. Uncannily, I remember way back when I was embarking to become a chartered accountant.
Lovely.
I was in a class of 120 people. I was one of two people who actually opted to go the route of commerce and become a chartered accountant. And I still remember all the way people would tease me, "You've got such good marks. Why are you taking commerce and becoming a common man?" And I would actually tell them, "Hey, you know what? I'm not going to be common. I'm going to be somebody exceptional. And who are you to tell me you've not done a CA? You've not really made it a career. So I'm not going to listen to you. And I'm going to listen to somebody who actually has done a CA." And so much so that my dad took me to a chartered accountant who was the CFO of Vikrant Tires at that point in time. And he shared the perspectives that he would share with me versus the perspective that you would hear outside is so different. You're absolutely right that the right mentor at the right time makes a huge difference.
Exactly what we do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your story, the story that you shared right now is exactly what we do on the platform. And I think that's what makes it so special.
The weird thing, Akshay, is I didn't get a lot of input from that mentor. He told me just one line and said, "Don't come to me only when you need me." And the other thing is, never be an also-ran.
Well, it worked. It seemed like it worked. So
those are the only two things. For 3 years, when I was studying, I swore that I would never go back to him without ever succeeding and having become a chartered accountant. And every time, the going felt tough, I would tell myself, I don't want to be an also-ran. I don't want to go out into the world and say, "Hey, I tried it too." And that is a philosophy that has stayed with me. Sometimes it stops you from giving up on the things that you should. So, but anyway.
No, beautiful. We all needed fire. We all needed fire to be coming from somewhere. This was it for you.
Yeah.
This is what we are supposed to. This is what the ethos of the platform is. That is what we essentially try and do by using machine learning and by giving the students a dashboard and kind of building multiple motivational tools and techniques for them to kind of make sure that they're able to get to the target. Because it is a tough journey for every single person who's getting onto a track like this. To be able to make something out of themselves, to be able to, I always often say, and this is something I really believe in, at the very core, this is the mission of the company, that every single time a person's life is transformed, the family's life which is transformed, it's the family's life which gets leveled up. If you can essentially do that for every single time you're doing it for one student, you're essentially leveling up a family of 5-10 people. So to me, there is nothing more impactful or more important than that I can do in my life, and hence I devote every single living second that I have. I'm going to do that for the many coming decades from here, and hopefully have a much massive impact while doing it.
No question about it. The first time I actually became privy to what goes on into the college admission process is when I read a book called Fat Envelope Frenzy way back, I think in 2008 or 2009. I think it was written by a lady called, I don't remember. There was one lady who was the assistant or director of admissions at Dartmouth College in the US. And she shares the story of 5 students who the ups and downs that they go through, because being accepted into a US Ivy League college means much more than just showing a certificate with a bunch of scores in it, right?
Correct.
The Indian education system is still a bit rudimentary, very driven off of certificates. The essays that you need to write, it squeezes every ounce of you, all the various talents that you have. And that was just the story of 5 students. If you, and now based on the numbers you've shared with us, 13,000 students. So talk to us about some of the first initial students that had the breakthroughs, that went to a US college, and what sort of stories did they have? What sort of impact did you observe that you had on them?
Sure, very interesting. And I do miss that part. So till about December 2017, which is the first year of the company, that's when I kind of last worked with a student myself. After that, I kind of moved on. I was getting completely choked. But till then, I remember for the first year that I kind of directly worked with students, and I engage with students once in a while now. Probably 2 students in an year or something like that. Just kind of be in touch and make sure I know what's happening on the ground. I think not just US, but a lot of people, when you see that what they started with back then slightly confused, some really motivated, but not really sure where to kind of what direction to put that motivation in. Some slightly worried, some confident in the wrong sense and going in a very not very sure about what those goals should really look like and going in a direction that they're not supposed to. So the very fact that you could essentially give them somebody who could relate to them and somebody who had been in the shoes, that made so much of a difference. I knew that, okay, I have a certain personality type and I won't be able to kind of get, and that's such an important word, get everybody. But if somebody who's also a footballer who devotes a lot of their time outside work or outside college to football and who has built out a career for themselves is right now working in Star Sports or ESPN, if that person can tell them the importance of adding studies or adding finance or adding management or adding something else to football, that will really kind of work well for them. Or if this undergrad student who's in class 11, if this school student who's in class 11 right now looking to pursue their undergraduate studies, is their parents are told that don't push this guy to give his SATs or IELTS or TOEFL, but have your kid kind of really fulfill this ambition of studying football and doing something in the space. He could be working at a football club in the UK. He could be working at one of the sports channels, and they would wonder, hey, does that option really exist? And we tell them, hey, yeah, that option really exists, and that is something that your daughter or son would be really happy at. And to ensure that, so if I have to pick one word, Krishna, so awareness is so low in India about the diversity of career options that we have. What gave me happiness in that first year was that so many more people were becoming aware of what's the right thing to do. That used to just bloom up my day. And to a large extent, it still does. We have people who are kind of going out and studying photosynthesis because they love that aspect of the word. Some people who are going and studying about vines in University of Strathclyde in Scotland, and they will come out and they will open some of the best restaurants and breweries in Bangalore and Delhi that you and I will be at. So we need people from all kinds, and people can be successful in different professions. I mentioned Chef Vikas Khanna earlier on. He's such an inspiration right now. He's feeding millions and millions during this lockdown. And I think that just is an example of what people can do if they kind of focus on the right thing, which is natural to them. And that is something which is very important to us. That is very inherent to us at Leverage Edu.
Amazing. Coaching students is always a fulfilling experience, Akshay. I think about 20 years ago, there was a startup just out of college that I was running along with my co-founder, and we didn't have money. We did also not know the concept of funding back then. So we were building a case flow automation software, somewhat like a SaaS tool, but it was on premise. So we didn't have money to fund that. So what we ended up doing was we were doing a lot of coaching, career coaching. We were taking students in tier 2 towns and putting them in touch with companies like Philips Software in Bangalore. And I must have personally covered about 2,000 students over a period of about 18 months. And the funny thing is, for example, we would go to a town like Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh, and we would meet students. There would be a class of 200 students talking about the lack of awareness about career options. We would ask a class of 200 students who are pursuing BCA or MCA and ask them, what is your plan? And then they would say, hey, I want to be a lecturer teaching computer science in Tirupati. And then I would turn around and tell them, look at you, there are 200 of you in this room alone. And then if every one of you wants to be a lecturer, there aren't 200 colleges in Tirupati, and let alone South India. So once I encountered something of that sort, I decided that we need to create awareness. So I would go around colleges, and I used to do 1 to 1.5 hour long presentations. I would talk about innovation trends. I would talk, and this was the time when that Silicon Valley, the .com bubble had burst, right? So there was a lot of negativity around, similar to somewhat like the COVID scenario right now. So people used to think, okay, internet is down, the future is bleak. So I would, and that is why one of the other reasons they wanted to be a lecturer, because it is sort of dependable. So I would turn around and say, guys, these are all the innovations that are going on. There's a lot of life ahead. Come work with us, come do different projects. So we would have a subset of students that would say, I just want to buy a project from you. You code the project and give it to me. I'll represent it as my own. And that was 95% of the student, and they would be willing to pay any price. And then we had another set of students that would say, okay, I want to be an original. I took the high road back then, did not work with any of the 95%. We said, even if it means only putting a few handful of students who do it the right way, will do it that way. So all of them eventually ended up, I think about 40 odd out of the guys who did original projects, all of them ended up in the US, and some of them are entrepreneurs too today. So, and back in India.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, it can be very fulfilling. So let's talk about your.
Also, by the way.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
College admissions is a very popular route to start the entrepreneurial journey. Ivan Spiegel from Snapchat, his first company was college admissions. Couldn't work it out and then started Snap. So yeah, it's been the path for a lot of people out there. Yeah. Yes, over to you.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. Well, I guess it'll be your journey to fulfill, where even fail, you'll succeed.
Absolutely. That's what we are hopeful of. That's what we are working towards. Very excited about.
Talk to us a little bit about your founding team, co-founders, and how did you put that together?
Sure. So we call it like the management team. A couple of us. Let me kind of briefly talk about some of them. I think from the very beginning, when you're kind of tinkering something, I had a friend by the name of Aman, who was a founder himself, who was running a beautiful tech services company based out of Gurgaon. So he built out the first few versions of Leverage, and he was playing a very active role, though on the sides. I was one of his important / big clients, and I think when I kept pursuing him, I kept asking him to essentially come over and join the ship. And when we raised our first institutional round from Bloom and TSG, that's when he kind of came on board. And he's been with us as a co-founder for the last 1.5 years now. So that's Aman, who leads tech. And I told you about Digvijay. Digvijay was the first guy, and we started kind of very excited, discuss this idea together. Digvijay went on to have a great journey himself in the last couple of years. He went into Matrix Partners right post ISB, then worked at McKinsey & Company for about 4 to 5 years. And late last year, when he was kind of figuring out what next to do, again, we had a chat. I told him, hey, Dix, why don't you essentially come on board and join the ship? Let's kind of build a gigantic company out of it and make sure we are having a massive impact while at it. So Digvijay came on board. He's now a chief operating officer. And then we have Gaurav, who essentially is a chief business officer, who I was lucky to kind of bump into one sunny afternoon in Bangalore itself, in Koramangala, in Innovate. And we had a great chat. There was alignment on a bunch of values. And he kind of comes in and leads a lot of important functions in the company too today. And then we have a bunch of very interesting folks right across. It will be unfair for me to kind of miss out one for the other, so I'm going to take a skip. But very, very fortunate to be working with some really interesting colleagues and some really accomplished individuals who I learn a lot from every single day.
Well, it just shows your humility, Akshay. From the get-go, I can make out how humble you are and how excited you are. It's a rare combination. People who are grounded, who are humble, who are excited all at the same time. So I think it's no surprise that you have found a leadership team like that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. My wife has taught me to accept compliments and say thank you when somebody says something good to you. So thank you very much for that.
Sure. Let's give credit where it's due, right? So you've already touched upon the funding journey a little bit, and you bootstrapped, you were profitable. So I'm just assuming that the first, is it right on my part to assume that the first 5 or 6 months when you were profitable, you funded it and then you immediately started making, so you were not very worried about the money part and you did not actively seek funds, or is the funding story a little different?
A little different. So it again depends, right? Like what do you want to build? You want to build a business which does XYZ revenue and XYZ impact and you're happy with it? Do you want to essentially build something which has impact that you cannot imagine today? I think my idea of building a business was to always build a very, very large business. And when you're looking to build a very large business, of course, you need capital to kind of fuel that growth. So I think the capital raising journey has been kind of, it's been in parallel. So after every 6 to 8 months, you essentially land up at the door of interesting people who you think you want to partner with. Because I had again been in the ecosystem, I had my eyes on a bunch of people who I had a lot of respect for, And I approached them saying that, hey, you know what, I've looked up to you. Would you like to be essentially kind of build it together with me? And I think I was lucky enough to have that. So even though when we raised the first angel/seed round, we were kind of figuring out how to get institutional capital in the company, because that will kind of really rocket our growth. So that's what happened. And I think perhaps say 8 to 10 months after we raised the seed round, we were able to get about 5 term sheets for our institutional round, for our VC round. And we, again, I will use the same word, fortunately kind of selected the best 2 of them. People I was kind of really excited to work with, learn from, get mentored by. And I think that decision taken about almost 2 years back now, 1.5, 2 years back, I think has been very pivotal in terms of how we have grown and in terms of how I have also kind of grown personally as an entrepreneur in my own personal journey.
Interesting. A terrific lesson. It's a great situation to be in where you have multiple term sheets to choose from. Most people are on the other side, right? But let's take a little bit of a digression and discuss what we have going on today. The COVID situation has disrupted a lot of business, disrupted life in general across the world. And here is, as an entrepreneur, I want your perspective, because like Steve Jobs says, the toughest part, and even great investors say, the art that you need to really develop is the art of saying no, right? You right now are in the education business, let's say tangentially so, because you're enabling people to get on the path of education.
Correct.
But you already have a recognizable brand, you have lakhs of students that are coming to your site on a regular basis. So you have funding. We see a lot of companies that are just going for the kill, so to speak, just jumping in. I know a lot of entrepreneurs personally that I know were saying, hey, I was working on something, looks like COVID has disrupted it. Why don't I just jump into the online learning space? Right. So it is one thing to be opportunistic, but a totally different thing to be only opportunistic, right? Because then what it means is you'll never put a stake in the ground and say, hey, this is something that I'm going to work with. How do you see that scenario?
Oh, sure. Very interesting remarks. So very, very, very limited view on online learning per se. We essentially have a live learning network called Leverage Live, where we essentially use it as a value-added services tool, where people who come onto our platform who want to get to college, if they want test prep for a particular course like an IELTS or TOEFL or GMAT, GRE SAT as well, we help them engage with about 50 plus educators who are there on the Leverage Live marketplace. So not our core business, but we essentially have that piece going on as well. But what I've seen, Krishna, there is that it's great that lot more people are excited about EdTech. Of course, that was a very different case from when I started up. But I just feel, and I'm saying this to somebody else also the other day, I would be more excited if these same people, these same EdTech entrepreneurs, if that's what I want to say, focus on solving the real problems that are out there. For example, even in online learning, if you look at it from a supply chain framework, there are a bunch of things that are essentially needed. If you're looking at online education in schools, it's an ocean right now. It needs to be imagined ground up. We can't put the same Zoom infrastructure, give it to a teacher, give it to a student and ask them to essentially conduct a classroom. So that online education piece needs to be imagined ground up. So a lot more innovation needs to come to it. You need to figure out, okay, what are the different tech pieces that will make sure that this is functioning properly. Can we essentially build a company which is just helping the teachers, that teacher training piece? That is so big, that is so massive in itself. Can we build a company which is helping some of the larger edtechs get teaching assistants? That can be a very great opportunity. So I think it's very important that people understand the problem at its very core and then solve the issues that really matter in it. Just kind of replicating what somebody else is doing and doing a Control-C, Control-V doesn't really, I don't think that's the right approach to really kind of being an entrepreneur. You really want to kind of solve something which is very, very core, and that will give you your ikigai, and as I call it, and make sure you're able to have a very large impact in a very quick time. So that is one piece to it. Second piece to it is, in our case, again, I think we were fortunate. It's been a great learning experience for me personally as well. So we went out and realized that, you know what, in our case, a lot of brick and mortar competitors are out there, and they're going to shut their shop for quite a while because of the lockdown, because of what's happening in the COVID scene. And that gave us a great opportunity to kind of build online tools to get ahead of the market. I don't know if you've heard this quote. I love this. You can get ahead of the car in front only when it's raining. And we knew that it was pouring, man. Like, it was pouring like crazy. So we built out a new tool that we launched, became very famous sometime in April, called UniConnect, which was a live fair platform which would help students meet like hundreds of universities. So we onboarded all these universities in say about 2 to 3 weeks, and these universities would get a booth to themselves, a virtual booth. A student could log onto the booth, enter the booth, discuss 1:1 video, what are my career aspirations, directly speak to the university representatives, click on apply now, application goes Zoom right into the college. We launched this new product on the career side that I was talking about in schools. So we realized that it gives us a great time to go on and build new things and solve problems that are kind of really core to the situation that is right now, or pivotal to the word that is essentially moving down to. And I think that's kind of paid us its dividends. Our revenue has increased by about 3x from pre-COVID to today, monthly revenues. Like I told you before the thing when we were chatting about this, that we've kind of been growing 25% month on month for a while now. We in fact went out and we have put out about 100 open positions at the company right now. We're hiring across 4 cities at the moment. So the fact that this opportunity, and we saw it conservatively in the beginning to begin with, by the way. We said that, okay, let's conserve our resources. Let's not make those ATL spends. We don't need to go to Times of India to put a full page ad as we want to do in April. We don't need to go and we had just partnered with a movie called Angrezi Medium in March. We wanted to kind of go out and talk about it as much as possible. But we couldn't do that. Sadly, Irfan Khan passed away as well. And a lot more things that we had planned to do in a very different way, do a big marketing blitz, all of that. But we realized that, okay, let's pivot the strategy a little bit. Let's focus on building tools that will really matter in the coming 3 to 4 months, because that's not going anywhere. People will need the right support ecosystems to be able to take the right decisions and to be able to kind of achieve their dreams. So that's what we did. I think that the numbers kind of spoke for themselves at the end of the day. And also while we chased the revenues, we had our cash burn come down by about 1/3. So that's what I tell to myself, that maybe I think the COVID period taught me to be a better entrepreneur and be more granular in some sense with everything that is happening on a day-to-day basis.
Interesting that you should say we have to do things from the grounds up. I share that immensely, Akshay. One of the things that is sort of lacking severely in our education system today is, I don't know if you remember this, back when I was growing up, I think when I was a teenager or maybe a little earlier, we used to have 2 kinds of institutions. We have multiple kinds today, but one was called a polytechnic, where people would go and learn certain abilities.
Correct.
Right? Like a tooler, machiner. And then there was another set, maybe polytechnics were part of the same group, called job-oriented courses. Right? So people who came out of those jobs had a certain ability. They could be a lathe expert, they could be a machiner. Eventually we killed manufacturing for whatever odd reason. So much so that today we are awash with people who just peddle around paper, right? 4 years ago, when we were recruiting tech interns for our company, we had to go through 500 people just to hire 4 people.
Oh, wow.
And these were all qualified tech people who had completed their 4th year. And the funny thing is, 4th year or on the verge of completing their 4th year, out of all of that, only that 500, only about 20 people really knew how to code. And they had gone to all these, well-known institutions. So we have people who have knowledge but have no ability, right? I don't believe in all this COVID online learning part. As it is, you're not getting your hands dirty. And software might be something that you can learn with just a computer and you behind that. But real learning comes from, working with fraternity of people, exchanging concepts, and then doing things together. That's real learning, right? You don't create things in isolation.
No, absolutely, Krishna. No, I completely agree with you, and I think the Indian education ecosystem at that tier 2, tier 3 level needs to massively change. I spend a lot of my time in the UK, which is a very important area for us right now. We have large the UK student mobility happening thanks to the Prime Minister opening up the PSW, the post-study work visa, a couple of weeks back, and we were anticipating this for about last 1 year right now. And when I kind of meet so many universities, I've met easily some 100 plus universities in the UK in the last 1 year. Almost all of them have a mandatory either a plus 1 year to do an internship or a couple of projects lined up alongside 3 working days and 3 study days, so that you can essentially do a lot of things practically as well and learn very, very quickly while you are essentially pursuing the degree. And I think that approach, that westernized approach of education, I think I'm a big fan of that. And I think that needs to essentially be brought into the tier 2. I think it already happens in some of our best institutes across the country, but it needs to be brought in and kind of really, I wish somebody could essentially make it a policy and say that, hey, you know what, there has to be a completely mandatory 1 year of internship across 3 companies. You need to do these XYZ skills. Otherwise, you won't be given the degree. You won't graduate.
Right.
Yeah, those changes need to happen. And it is our duty, I think, yours, mine, a lot of other folks in the education ecosystem to make sure that stuff like this happens in the next couple of years, so that together we can make sure that the next generation gets the jobs that they really deserve to be at.
I agree. In fact, having that last year of internship is something that an idea that I've toyed with. I also think it needs to go a step further, Akshay, in terms of developing multi capabilities, right? So the chef Vikas Khanna that you spoke about, he did not become a chef overnight, right? There were multiple sources of inspirations. I remember reading a book called Fluid by a guy called Ashish Jaiswal. And in one of the chapters, he talks about, I think, this Purana called Vishnu Dharmottaram Puranam. And in that, there's a small passage where Arjuna has won the battle, and eventually Markandeya, a sage Markandeya tells Arjuna, hey, you know what, you need to spread Krishna's awareness across the world or across the known universe. So therefore start constructing temples, right? And then that is a king called King Vajra takes that up. And then he asks the sage saying, how is it can I build a temple? Please tell me. And then the sage actually goes into a circular reasoning method. He says, I cannot tell you how to build a temple or a statue unless and until you learn the principle of sketching. So the king then says, okay, teach me the principle of sketching. He tells him, I cannot teach you the principle of sketching if you don't know the principles of dancing. And then he says, okay, then teach me all of these and then dancing. And he tells him, I cannot teach you that without teaching the principles of musical instruments. And then he goes on and on. The point the sage is trying to make is, behind every great piece of knowledge or giving birth to something, there are multifaceted areas that we need to imbibe. And that range of expertise is not something that our education system, even in some sense the US education system, starts pigeonholing people, starts pushing people to specialize, whereas that range development is something that should happen.
That's very true. No, you made a very poignant point, and I think a lot of people had a chance to speak to a lot of policymakers in the US. So they're up in arms and they are saying that the system in the US needs to change as well. But I think a few countries who are changing it, like we were speaking about New Zealand before we went on this call, they are kind of bringing in a lot of change. Australia is bringing in a lot of change. UK is bringing in so much change. China, for all that has happened in the recent months, China has brought in a lot of good change in their education system. So yeah, lot more needs to be done, of course. We need to revisit the story that you shared again and again with hundreds and thousands of people to be able to make sure that we are able to build up something which is very attractive, which sets things in motion going forward.
Awesome. We've covered a whole hour, Akshay. It never felt like it. It has been such a breezing conversation.
Thanks to you.
Well, thanks to you as well. So for the listeners of Maharajas of Scale, entrepreneurs who are considering or contemplating starting out, what would your words of wisdom be?
Sure. Interesting question. I don't know if I'm qualified to answer it as yet. Still very early on in my journey, just 3 years out. A couple of rounds of financing. We are 100 odd people. But based on my limited experience, I would say the only thing that really matters at the end of the day is perseverance. Because everything that has to go wrong will go wrong 100%. Every day you will have at least like 10 different fires that you need to kind of put off. You will have the worst possible days. The glamour of starting up will disappear in the first 15 days of you starting up. And then every day essentially it's just like, it's a survival mode that you'll have to play on so many days. The happy days, the happiest days will essentially tell you that, hey, you know what, okay, I've taken this off my list, but now I need to essentially move to the next piece. So essentially there is no end goal per se. There is no point that you're trying to reach. You're just kind of moving from one pillar to another and then to another as you're trying to build a big company. So what really matters during times like those is when things go really tough, and I'm sure like this is out there and millions of books already. Perseverance is the only thing that really counts. And kind of building a company tests you on that every single day. I think every single hour. Yeah. So that is, if there is one thing I want to kind of push off towards the end of this episode, that will be it, Krishna.
That's awesome.
And also, I think one connected advice, which I think will be, of course, it aligns with the platform also. Make sure that you are investing in yourself and like massively investing in yourself, because you really need to learn at a crazy pace to be able to run a company. And you need to have the right mentors to guide you and to be with you as you scale this journey. Most likely people who have essentially gone through the journey themselves. So pick up people who you think you are close to, who you think you are like in some way. And that's going to be really, really important part of a journey as well. Having the right mentors, investing in yourself so much, and that's kind of being there and like kind of having that perseverance to stick it out. And then good things will happen. We are a country of entrepreneurs. We are going to definitely triple and quadruple our output very, very soon and be a 10 trillion economy. Hopefully, I'm very optimistic about all of those aspects.
Fantastic. So Akshay, it speaks volumes for your own humility. I think your own story is a story of persistence. You started it in 2015 and you picked it up where you had left it off. You went out, you said, I have to figure something that makes money out here, and came back and leveraged all the lessons that you learned from your first outing, which was about the mentorship network. So awesome. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I know this is just the beginning. You're just getting started. Education is an evergreen or a industry that is going to exist as long as humanity exists. And with your own humble self and your humility-driven leadership, I'm sure you'll scale greater heights. Maharajas of Scale will be there to cheer you and also to talk to you again. When you scale a new peak and say, hey, how does that vantage point look like? What are some newer learnings that you want to share?
Very kind of you. Very, very kind of you. You are very humble. I'm really appreciative of those words, and I really look forward to being back and sharing more as I move forward on the journey. Thank you, really. Thank you very much, Krishna.
Thank you, Akshay. We wish you the very best.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this story. If this story made a difference to you, tell us by leaving a comment on the website or our social media channels. Help us spread the love by subscribing, liking, and sharing our show. We welcome speaker suggestions and collaborations. Write to me at nida@maharajasofscale.com.